All right, everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of the Bulletproof Entrepreneur Podcast. My guest today is Costas Theocharidis. Costas is a real estate entrepreneur, best-selling author, ex-Deloitte Merrill Lynch PwC corporate consultant. He's an NCAA champion and record holder, two-time silver medalist in the World and European Championships. He's the author of the new book, Warrior for Life. And of course, he's my friend and former colleague when we worked together in consulting. I'm pleased to have Costas today to tell us a little bit about his life story, his book, and then his philosophy for, building a business. Actually, I'll put it like this. Costas retired from corporate after working 20 years. He's now a real estate entrepreneur. So we're going to try and mash as much of his life story and as much of the entrepreneurship principles we can learn from him in this quick conversation. So with that said, Costas, welcome to the podcast.
Glad to be on your show, Chi. We haven't seen each other in 11 years.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, I've been following up your progress on LinkedIn, and man, you've gone places. And I'm just really proud of the success that you have enjoyed over the years.
Thanks a lot, Costas. Thanks a lot. So, Costas, let's get right into it. There's a lot to cover in your book, but let's try and see if we can summarize it a little bit and talk a little bit about your origin story and how you achieved so much as a championship athlete for not only your college but also representing your country.
Yeah, so I am originally from Greece, a small, rural, remote part of Greece in the northeastern part, very close to Bulgaria and Turkey. And it so happened that my town was a hotbed for volleyball talent back in the 80s, and it developed one of the best volleyball academies in Europe, arguably in the world. So at a very young age, I got involved with the sport. I was actually 12 years old, and it was interesting because junior high for us. I was a student athlete, so I would go to practice 6:30 until 9 o'clock every morning, and then from there I would go to school. And I did this for 3 years, and then when I entered high school, I joined the professional volleyball club that at that time was one of the best in Europe, and that required a lot of training. So aside from my studies, I spent a lot of time on the volleyball court. And a few years later, I decided that the best thing for me would be to find a way to balance school with playing volleyball. So if there was a way to get a scholarship to study abroad, because that was not feasible in Greece. In Greece, there were two paths. Either you would have to give up your volleyball career and go to school full time, which wouldn't leave you any time to play professionally, or you would basically sign a professional contract and be a professional athlete, but then you would kind of put your studies aside. And it was something that I felt at the time was really risky, because obviously with sports come injuries and people can have short careers. So I was a straight A student, and I felt I deserved something more than just playing professional volleyball. So while being on the national team, we actually did really well. We played in the World Championship and the European Championship in '97 with a U21 team, and we got silver medal in both competitions. But aside from the distinctions, what really helped me was having access to individuals who were from bigger cities than mine, who we had more well-off backgrounds that were looking to study abroad. And that's when the concept of getting a scholarship and going to the United States and playing college came up. And I was like, wow, it just clicked for me, because that's exactly what would have given me the chance to study and play. And if volleyball financed my education, I mean, I couldn't have asked more. So that's when the process started. Me reaching out to, of course, back in the day, you had the VHS tapes. Nothing like nowadays. People wouldn't even understand, right? VHS. Yeah, so you had those tapes, and you put them in the
Wait,
envelope.
just to level set the time, and this is like early 2099-ish, right? Yeah.
That was I started reaching out to American colleges in '98. In
98,
'98,
okay.
yeah, and it was man, it was tough. It was very disheartening, very discouraging. I would reach out to people, and nobody was willing to offer me a full scholarship. And I was like, and I had to get a full ride. There was no way around this thing. My parents wouldn't be able to afford it otherwise. So I was like, there must be a way to be able to get a scholarship. But a lot of people, looked at me, looked at the tapes, and they're like, you know what, we can offer a bunch of people a partial scholarship instead of just going all in on just one talent. That was very risky, and I can understand that. There wasn't any live demonstrations of my skill set. I never traveled to the United States prior to that. For live training with the coaches and stuff. And everything was just basically done over correspondence. So, a year and a half later, it so happened, I ended up playing against the captain of the U.S. national team in one of the matches in Greece. And after the game, Mike Lambert, who is an alum, Stanford and Hawaii alum. And after the game, and I had a really good game. We lost in 5, but my playing left an impression on Mike. And I asked him, I was like, Mike, do you think I can play at the collegiate level? He's like, oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I'm going to introduce you to the head coach of the University of Hawaii. And I was like, my jaw dropped, right? I was like, University of Hawaii? I'd never considered Hawaii. I didn't even know what Hawaii was, right? So after my discussion with Mike, I went home and I started looking for Hawaii. And I was looking at the Atlantic Ocean, right? And I was like, where the hell is Hawaii? And then as I was rotating the globe, and I'm like, oh my God. So this is, it's obviously in the Pacific Ocean. And the time difference from Greece is 12 hours. So Greece is right in the middle of the globe. On the far left, you have Hawaii. So you're talking about a place that is as far as from Greece as possible, right? So, but it was so exciting to have somebody tell you that you can actually play that level, right? So that really made me feel good about things. And obviously he opened the communication channels with Coach Mike Wilton, Hawaii, and lo and behold, a full ride came my way, and that's how this whole trip, this whole journey started. And I made the leap of faith in August 1999. And from there, I had a very eventful career. People would like to learn more about it. I have a lot of details in the book about my athletic career.
Yeah. Okay, so let's give some people just some highlights, because you did go into a lot. There was injuries, there were lots of wins, successes, and all that. So let's say, what were some of the highlights of your career playing volleyball, and then in college, right, in Hawaii? And then, what were some of the low points as well?
Obviously, for people that may not necessarily know how things are being done in Hawaii at collegiate level, volleyball is basically the king of sports there. There is no professional sports in Hawaii. I mean, they used to have Aloha Bowl, but that's different. And it's an amazing experience. We're talking about an arena that, when it's sold out, it's more than 10,000 people capacity. That's a men's volleyball game, right? And women's volleyball as well. And when you go to the mainland, the biggest draw you'll see is maybe 500 people on a good night. So you are on the men's volleyball team, you become a celebrity overnight, which has, of course, the advantages. It also has the disadvantages. You're talking about young student athletes, a lot of them being far away from home. There's a lot of pressure to perform, especially if you have a scholarship, right? So the scholarship is something that can be taken away. It's not that you're signing a 4-year contract with the team and be like, okay, it's not like you're getting a tenure and that's it. No. You have to perform, you have to exceed expectations or even meet expectations, right? And keep that scholarship. And you sign this every single year. So there is a very small number of people that are getting a full ride, right? So there was a lot of pressure on my shoulders to actually make things happen. And my first year was, it didn't start out the best way possible. Again, if you read the book, you'll see there's injuries, there's hospitalizations, there's all kinds of things. But going through those experiences, it teaches you a lot of things that eventually you find very useful in life. Because anything that you learn in sports, it becomes transferable to all other aspects of your life, right? Dealing with the rejections, the failures, the setbacks, etc. It really toughens you up. So playing in Hawaii, it was an amazing experience, and even nowadays when I go back, people still remember, which is an amazing thing. Obviously, I had a tremendous brotherhood, people that I started out with. We're in the same class as freshmen. We were one of the premier volleyball programs in the country. We actually won the NCAA title in 2002. And I'm still in touch with a lot of my brothers. And that's another advantage of being in a team sport and play at a high level, right? You have that brotherhood for life. Yeah. So
yeah, go ahead. Okay. So I was going to say, before we move away from that, it was great. The people loved it. It was like the major sports in the islands, right? But if you looked at your career then versus now, especially now that, they have the name, image, and likeness contracts that makes it lucrative to be a collegiate player. Now, do you think if that had existed when you were playing, that might have probably changed the trajectory of your life, or would you have made more money or stayed in professional sports versus transitioning off to go work in the corporate world?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'm glad it didn't work out like this when I was back then, right? So, and the reason for that for me is what I loved about the sport. It was the purity, the innocence of it. That I played because I had fun playing the sport, right?
Yeah.
Nowadays they make it as you're a professional entering college, and I think now it's spilling into the high school sports as well, and that is a huge distraction for the kids. The social media hasn't made it any easy either, so everybody talks about subscribers and followers and this and that instead of focusing on what are the important things in life, right? And making money, it's not the most important thing in life. So a lot of people goes back to the comment that I was making before we started the session, right? It was that it's that instant gratification that everybody's trying to make a lot of money. Everybody's trying to be independently wealthy from the get-go without necessarily setting up the foundation, right? And to set up the foundation, it takes time, right? To be able to build your skills. And I'm not talking about skills just in sports. I'm talking about life skills, right? To have the right skill set. In my eyes, you have to work in the corporate world to be able to build that, to become business savvy, right? You have to go through that experience. You have to experience that journey. You may not necessarily like it. I get it. Looking back, the reason why, and we can get more into that. The reason why I felt after 20 years like, wow, this is really it. I'm ready to strike out on my own. It was because of all the experience that I've had, right, in the corporate world. Things never really necessarily clicked for me, and that's the reason why I tried different things. So under the finance world, under the finance umbrella, I went into private wealth management. I worked for a smaller firm in Hawaii, and then I moved to Merrill Lynch in the Boston area, right, during the Great Recession. I went back to school, and then when I came back, I worked in, at PwC. So we did private equity valuations together. And then I did financial restructuring, investment banking, and then I eventually moved into I worked for Deloitte, where I did financial restructuring turnaround work. But I tried different things, right? And all those experiences, working with healthy clients, with distressed clients, big clients, small clients, international clients, domestic clients, it teaches you a lot, right, about life. It teaches you a lot about how to evaluate things, investments, figure out the worth of it, how to finance things. Um, it, it really hones your critical thinking skills, right? And then you start developing a certain mentality, right? You have to have mental toughness when it comes down to being in the corporate world. It's like we're talking about the survival of the fittest. It's not easy to be in Manhattan and work crazy hours for a big firm serving big clients. And you know what I'm talking about. It's just not. If you make it in New York, you can make it anywhere, right? My wife worked for Goldman Sachs in the investment banking division on Wall Street right out of college. She absolutely hated it, right? But that's a pretty cool experience to have,
Yeah.
right? So yes, she worked there for a couple of years. She knew it was not the right thing for her, but she experienced that, right?
That's
She
true.
went through 40 interviews to land that job. That takes a lot of guts to be able to go through something like this. You know,
Yeah.
Goldman Sachs they don't just hire anybody off the street, obviously, right? You have to be the
Yeah.
cream of the crop.
Yeah.
So she didn't necessarily, she appreciated the experience. She didn't necessarily feel that it was the right path for her. But you know what? She made some pretty good money that helped her pay off her loans and start
Mm.
with a clean slate,
Yeah.
right? So there's other advantages to it. And now
Yeah.
she will be part of the Goldman Sachs alumni for life.
For
That's
life.
a
Yeah.
pretty cool perk to have as well, right?
Yeah.
So the mental toughness of it, you're not gonna just get it from the get-go. Yeah, go ahead, Chip.
And hold on. So before you continue, and just so that we don't gloss this over, because I know we skipped a lot, and it's all in the book if you want to read it. But Costa didn't just walk into PwC, right? Costa's tried equity research. He worked for free as an intern. He sent out 2,500 emails.
2,500, yeah, right.
Emails, I remember, before he got the. Do you even remember who was the director you spoke with? Was it somebody we worked together with before he got that job?
Yeah, it was in the derivatives department.
Okay.
It was the Cypriot director.
Okay.
Um,
Was it Tanuj?
no. It was the other. It was what's his name? It was the other guy. I forget
Okay.
his name. It's in the book, right?
Oh,
Did I
yeah, yeah.
mention his name?
No, you didn't
I mean,
mention his name. You just mentioned a
oh,
director.
Haris.
Oh, okay,
Haris
okay.
Adoniadis. I want to say it was his last
Oh,
name.
okay, got you. I don't think I met him when I joined at that time. Yeah.
Yeah, but he was working alongside with Tanuj. You know, the board
Yeah,
directors at the time.
yeah.
They were close to the bullpen, right?
Okay,
They
yeah,
were right there. Yeah.
yeah. So you can see that it wasn't the easiest thing. I just wanted to make sure we pointed that out, that because if you just move quickly, people would think, oh wow, champion, got a job. He really, really, really had to struggle. I don't want to oversell the struggle, right? But nothing came easy along the way. Correct.
No, it didn't, G, right? And
Yeah.
right out of college, and I went to college right out of grad school, right? So while I was in Merrill Lynch, right, to 08, 09, I lost my job, or I got laid
Mm.
off. I was in the private wealth management division. Things happened during the Great Recession. It was a bloodbath. I tried to go back to school. I applied to some of the top MBA programs, but I mean, they were just, all those top MBA programs were flooded with applications because everybody was laid off. Everybody was trying to go back to school. Um, I wasn't planning on going back to do my master's, but just because of what happened in the situation, I felt I needed to come out of the recession better positioned, right? And to the extent, the MBA didn't work out for me, I ended up going to the London School of Economics to do my master's in accounting and finance. The cool thing about it was I kind of got away from the US for about a year. So that gave me perspective. I'll tell you. I go to London, I study there. It was literally like drinking out of a fire hose. I mean, it was ridiculous. Everything was just so fast paced. And the cool thing is I was able to pay for my education. So I sold everything I had in the US and I invested everything into getting the master's degree from LSE, right? And I knew, even though I was interviewing during my graduate studies with some of the top management consulting firms in London, I knew that my heart was not there. I had to come back to the Northeast.
Yeah.
So leaving the US, it made me appreciate more about what I had there.
Yeah.
Right. Getting LSC, the LSC name, brand name on your resume is not a bad thing, especially in the finance world. But I had to start from scratch. Right. So when I came back from London, I basically had a few $100s in my bank. And that's when I tapped into the CFA database, right? So I had my CFA. I was a chartered financial analyst, which is one of the toughest designations to get in the finance world. It's a 3-year program, and it's a long journey, and there's a lot of stress involved. But having that allowed me to tap into the CFA database. Now, back then, they didn't really have any rules. So I was able to reach out to a lot of people. Nowadays, it's frowned upon, and I think I may have set the precedent for that. But I had to find a job, right? So I was so determined. I was obsessed to get something going, right? Yeah. So yes, I fired off 2,500 emails, different people in the Northeast. I didn't know what kind of field I was going into. It had to be finance, but I didn't know what exactly. So I spoke to people about all kinds of things: investment banking, private equity, private wealth management, equity research, and so on and so forth, real estate. I just didn't know. I wanted to get a job at that point, right? And it was a struggle. It was a big, big struggle because the economy was started recovering from the Great Recession, and a lot of companies weren't necessarily hiring yet. So I was able to have a few discussions, and one of them was with Harris, the PwC director, who said that he felt that my resume actually told a good story and that I might have been a good fit for PwC in New York. So I was like, okay. And, that kind of got the ball rolling and stuff. And in all honesty, in something I don't think I mentioned in the book, Chief, but it was truly my only shot. Out of 2,500 emails, and 4 months later, that was my only shot that I had interviewing with somebody, right? So it was a very, very tough environment. But if you have a big why, man, that's going to overshadow anything else in life. I'll tell you what, that's going to drive you to make it happen. And that's another experience, right? If you rely on making money in college off your name, right? That, if you don't allow things to happen in your life, you may not necessarily develop the type of mentality that you would have if you were to get out of college with your stomach growling and looking for a job. Let's put it that way, right? It's it takes a lot to get you to a point where you can be successful. It really takes a lot. I mean, nowadays it's so easy to look at, I would say, risky models like, you have the Zuckerbergs and the Bezos and the whatever the world were, like gazillionaires out there, and everybody's looking and it's like, I want to be like those people. Man, it's like, I don't know if you watched the Olympics, but they had Snoop Dogg swimming right next to Phelps. It's, it really humanizes, the sport. And you're like, wow, there's a big difference there. You think you can do this, but when you go up against all those geniuses, we don't stand a chance. Yeah. So we have to be realistic about our expectations as well, right? And a lot of things in life you can learn from just looking at nature. Things take their time. They have to go through a cycle, right? You have to set the foundation for growth and development. And a lot of it, I'll tell you, it can be very frustrating and discouraging in the beginning because you can go through a process of invisible growth. You don't see things happening, right? And you get frustrated. And it takes time. You have to grind it out day in and day out for things eventually to happen and put you in a position where you can be successful. people just not willing to put in the time, and people are impatient. And I think it's simple, but it's not easy to do, Chi. Right?
So you did that, you got the job, did well at the job. I don't think I mentioned it, but just to briefly mention, Costas was my senior associate. So he was there when I started with my friends. And, he was one of the guys we looked up to who taught us the ropes and how we were doing valuation. And then he transitions into corporate restructuring, did very well there. And eventually he retires from corporate America, you know, through real estate investing. So, Costas, let's just quickly summarize, what it was like to build your real estate portfolio that enabled you to retire from the corporate life into what you now do today.
Yeah, so I'm still busy nowadays. I'm a real estate entrepreneur, but I also provide my advisory services to my clients, right? I help my clients make decisions when it comes down to buying and selling properties. And, having the experience that I've had as an entrepreneur comes really handy. The real estate world is a very tough world, right? It's regulated, but a lot of times you look at how things are being done, and there's a lot of people in the industry. The barriers to entry are very low. You don't even have to have a college degree. You don't really have to have experience to break into the space. So it's interesting when you see people out there still renting for themselves, but somehow they feel well equipped to go out there and help people buy and sell places. It's just really interesting to see that happening. Nevertheless, the real estate piece of our journey, and our journey, just me and my wife, Elena, it was never really in the picture per se, right? So we started out in 2012 when we bought our condo in New York. That was during my PwC days. And, we felt that it was time for us to buy something, to buy a piece of property, right? So the economy was recovering in 2012, and we were able to get a mortgage. And we found a condo in the area where we were renting. It was actually a couple of streets down the road. It's right on the border, Long Island City and Sunnyside. So right across from Manhattan. It was not Manhattan, but you know what? You can find something very reasonable in that area. And it was only a 15-minute ride on the 7 train to Midtown. So Grand Central Station. And then from there, obviously, you kind of walk up to 42nd Madison, what PwC was. So it was a great area. It was very convenient, right? So we're able to find a nice piece of property. It was a condo in an apartment building, pre-war apartment building. And that's how our real estate journey started, right? And then you start learning about repairs, condo fees, assessment charges, all the things that go with being a condo owner. So over time, we realized that there could be something into investing in real estate, right? So we thought maybe we'll go back to Boston. We'll rent out our place in New York, and then maybe we'll buy something else in Boston. And eventually we did just that, right? We kept our place in New York, we rented it, we came back to Boston after 5 years in New York City. We wanted to be closer to my elderly in-laws. And, we want them to spend quality time with the grandchildren. And Boston is, you know that because you started out here. It is an amazing place. It's a very balanced environment. Like having experienced Hawaii, which things, it's like the island lifestyle out there. And then New York City, which is very fast-paced, right? Boston provides you a very nice balance where you can actually have a high quality of life with your family, but at the same time, there are some attractive professional opportunities out here. So we stayed with my in-laws for over a year trying to find a property for us. We're talking about we're trying to break into one of the hottest, hyper-competitive sellers markets of all time. See, it was absolutely ridiculous. But you know what? Looking back, it was the best thing that ever happened to us. It took us 10 months to find a place. 10 months, right? And it wasn't that we weren't trying. It was just because there was so much growth and development in the Boston area. And of course, you have great schools out here, and you have Tufts University, you have Harvard University, you have MIT. A lot of things are happening. It's a very coveted and very, very vibrant market out here, right? They have developers coming, a lot of international capital flowing. So there was a lot of things happening that put us in a position where we're like, wow, are we ever going to be able to afford something out here? So little by little, we started learning more about single families and then multifamilies, two families, three families. And there is a high concentration of multifamilies out here in the Somerville area, Somerville, Cambridge. It's one of the most densely populated areas in the country. And, our approach to things were, we wanted to find a single family, right? But it was interesting because as we start going through the process and we start building a relationship with mortgage brokers and lenders, they will come back to us and be like, you can actually afford, you can qualify for this amount, which was like multiples of what we were thinking we can qualify based on our earning power and assets and liquidity. And we're like, hold on a second here. We can actually go for a multifamily investment, right? And the beauty of that is multifamily, you can be a two-family or three-family, you can live in one unit, and then you can rent out the other units. Yeah. Right? And then defray or even fully cover, the mortgage payments. And we're like, okay, well, this is the way to go. But we didn't know how much things cost, right? So you can go and buy a multifamily, but how much does it cost to replace the roof? How much does it cost to replace the chimney, to repoint the fieldstone foundation, to replace the boiler, the water heater, to renovate the bathroom, the kitchen, to add a bathroom, to convert a dining room into a bedroom if need be. So there was a very steep learning curve, right? So it took a long time to be able to have an offer accepted, but there was so much growth and learning that it was mixed up with a lot of frustration and disappointment in the meantime, right? That really allowed us to become more shrewd real estate investors. So as much as somebody would be like, oh, I wish I could have just had that first offer accepted, then you would have missed out on all the things that you could have learned, right? Because it's the circumstances that determine, right, who you want to end up being, right? Because it's going to depend how you want to react to those circumstances, right? Whether you're going to look at it from the victim's mindset and be like, oh, I can't believe this is happening to me. Or you're going to be like, no, that's cool. Now keep learning and eventually things will happen. And things eventually do happen. See, if you keep building your skill set, if you keep sharpening your mindset, the opportunity will arise. And you know what? The knowledge that compounds by just being out there, talking to people, learning things, and going through the experiences will allow you to identify opportunities that other people may not necessarily see that exist, right? So our philosophy was, our approach, we were very disciplined, right? So we were good earners, which is a good skill to have, earning money. We were very disciplined in maintaining our capital and saving it away and putting it away. So we had some dry powder to work with. We needed to finance the purchase, right? So we can put down 20, 25%, and then the rest of it had to be a mortgage. There was no way around this thing, right? So you go up against cash buyers, which it's hard to compete against, right? And we had contingencies in our offer. So you would have the mortgage contingency, being like, okay, well, if I can't qualify for the mortgage, then I don't have to buy the house. So it's a way out, right? You have the appraisal contingency. If this place doesn't appraise, then I can walk away, right? You have the inspection contingency. If I find things in there that don't make me feel very comfortable, or the seller doesn't want to make a concession or doesn't want to repair, then I can just, walk away from the place. But just because it was such a hyper-competitive seller's market, right? People could literally find bodies on the floor, dead bodies, and be like, I want this place. It was just, people could get away with murder. It was just crazy, right? So we had to smarten up. right? Because again, you go up against cash buyers, you may be going up against people that had clean offers, no contingencies, right? And then we're like, all right, we're not competitive. Now, we still wanted to have the mortgage, so we don't want to waive the mortgage contingency, right? And the appraisal in there, the appraisal contingency. But for the inspection part, we're like, all right, so we'll hire somebody. We'll identify the property that we want to go after. And then we're going to hire an inspector or a structural engineer for a couple $100 to do a limited scope inspection. Just look at the foundation, look at the roof, look at the mechanics, the systems, and just making sure that, things kind of, there are no mines there, right? Yes, we spent some money up front to do this, but it made our offers a little bit more attractive because now we waived the inspection contingency, right? But guess what? As we went through the process and we spent a few $100s here and there, we learned more about the foundations and about the roofs because we were asking the questions. So essentially, you were kind of paying tuition to learn more about real estate. It was interesting, right? But instead of paying the hundreds of thousands of dollars to get an MBA or a master's degree in real estate management or whatever the case, our tuition was much less. So our knowledge base was expanding. Every time we had a place that we liked, meeting up with the inspector, asking questions, learning, and slowly we start understanding how much things cost as well. So putting together little budgets for capital improvements or for cosmetic changes. And little by little things happened. And eventually we had a place very close to Tufts University where there was an offer accepted and we came in as backup offer, right? You have to get creative, especially when you're in this environment. You have to figure out ways to kind of think outside the box and like, you know what? The chance of the backup offer being accepted, it's very minimal. But does it hurt? If you don't ask, you don't know, right? Yeah. And it so happened the real estate advisor we're working with was good friends with the listing agent, right? And they told us that the backup offer probably will get accepted just because the person who had his offer accepted was not hitting the deadlines that were accepted on the PNS.
No, I know you have a hard stop, and obviously we could have gone a little bit longer in this, but because of your hard stop is in a couple of minutes or two, maybe we'll just condense it and say we might do this piece at a later date. But just to wrap up for people, what are some of the key takeaways in your career thus far? What did you want people to know about your entrepreneurship journey, as well as the lessons you learned in sports, so that they can get it within the next minute or two before you hit your hard stop?
When I look at my life, Chi, the biggest thing is embracing the failures, the setbacks, the rejections, and using it as fuel to get going, to keep going. Finding my big why that would basically be bigger than anything that would knock me out and keep me on the ground. I feel that the breadth and depth of experience that I had in life, whether it was sports, academics, professionally, investments, allowed me to be where I am today. But just because I walked away from the corporate world doesn't mean that I'm done, right? Because I think one thing that I've learned is that I truly respect people that strike out on their own and they're trying to make things happen by themselves, including yourself. It's probably the hardest thing out there after being a parent. It's not easy, right? I mean, you can testify to that. It's really hard to be out there, but going through the corporate world allows you, positions you to maximize your chances of doing well after you kind of detach yourself from all those things that you went through, but they were necessary. All those things were ingredients that were necessary in the recipe of success.
Yeah.
Yes, maybe we were not meant to be in the corporate world until we were 65 years old. I get it. But you know what? We have the fortitude and the courage to try to make things happen on our own. And I think hats off to everybody out there who have their own entrepreneurial ventures. Unless you go through that experience yourself, unless you're trying to find paying customers, you don't know what it's like, right? Yeah. When you work for the big firms, everything is kind of handed off to you, right? Because you work for those big brand names. But when you're out on your own, trying to build your own brand and trying to demonstrate your brand and differentiate yourself from the competition, that's when you truly become business savvy.
Thanks a lot, Costas, for coming to do the podcast. So before I let you run off, tell people where they can find you and when they can get a copy of the book.
So the book is called Costas Warrior for Life. It's on Amazon, and that's the place where people can look for it, or they can just Google it up online. Yeah, it's a good read. There's a lot of reviews online. You can go and check it out, and it's $20. But the e-version, the ebook, I think is a couple of dollars. So I'm trying to make it attractive for everybody to basically get access to my life's journey.
You have a website people can reach you?
I don't have a website. No, I'm not as sophisticated as you are.
You might need to get one, buddy. So yeah. So I'm going to link to the book, and then if you're also interested in working with Costas, if you're in the Boston area, since he does real estate advisory, I'll link to his real estate website as well, so that way you can connect with him one-on-one. So Costas, my friend, it's a pleasure having you to come share your story and teach us a little about building the resilient warrior mindset to help us in our entrepreneurship journey. And hopefully we'll catch up again, and maybe we'll book another time and spend longer and go through everything. Because I know we kind of contracted things a bit, and we just weren't sure of the time. But this is a good teaser. There's always going to be a part 2, so you guys watch out for that. And again, thanks a lot, Costas, for coming to share your story.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jay. I appreciate you having me on your show.
Awesome.